good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Joseph Miranda, broker and owner of Miranda Executive Realty, here to talk about our newest installment of our Ask the Broker, our bi-weekly training that we hold. Before we jump into it, we're going to do what we always do, and we're going to have our shameless plug moment. So this training is also going to be recorded. And so if an agent, you're watching this, you're not an MX agent, or any agents in here that are not MX agents, you can scan this QR code if you want to learn more about our company. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, today we're going to talk about 10 years of real estate in 1 hour. If you're an agent in Miranda Executive Realty, a lot of this is going to sound very familiar, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to compress. We put together what we believe to be some of the more important details in real estate and in a transaction, and what we should focus on. So if I had to start all over in real estate, right? If I were to just shut everything down in Florida or go expand somewhere else, what are the things that I would focus on, and how would I make that transition more smooth? Right. A lot of this, again, it's going to sound repeated. You're going to have heard it, and that's okay, because we really want to drive these things home. Right. Success in sales, success in real estate. It's not difficult, right? But it's very complicated, right? So it's easy, but it's not simple, right? We can break this down to the smallest common denominator, but even then it can be difficult to understand. There's things that I learned very early on in my career that I thought I understood, and then later on, as I did more transactions, had more sales, I realized that I didn't fully understand these things, and they really began to make a lot more sense as I matured in my position, as I matured in life. So we will do questions and answers at the end. So because this is recorded, we don't like to do questions and answers live. If you have any questions or you have any thoughts, if there's something that you feel like I missed, please jot it down, save it for the end, and we'll have an opportunity to have, question answers, maybe more of, an open discussion at that time. So quick disclaimer about myself. I am the broker and owner of Miranda Executive Realty. I probably might honestly really not know anything. So just take this with that in mind, that, a lot of this stuff is the way that I address my business, the way that I approach things myself. But, just assume that, okay, yeah, you know what, he probably knows nothing in the first place. So, take it from there, right? Put it through that test. So first thing we're going to talk about is the most important thing in sales, the most important thing 100%. If you're going to be a real estate sales agent, what do you need to focus on, right? If you remember all the way back, probably 2 years ago, we started this training, we started this thing, the 20%, Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule, right? This is where essentially we've broken down these transactions, or broken down the sales cycle from beginning to end. These are big terms, right? Lead generation, that's a big term. Where are you getting these leads from? Lead follow-up, that's another big term. How are you following up, right? Going on appointments, what type of appointments are these? Writing and negotiating contracts, right? What type of contract? What are you negotiating? What are the terms? And closing the sale, right? These are your big terms, but this is the flow of a real estate sales cycle, right? This is where the rubber hits the road, right? So lead generation. What is lead generation? Well, that's when we're looking to attract our potential customers, right? So what are you doing to attract your potential customers? Follow-up, right? Because not every lead source is going to convert immediately. You may have a phone call from time to time with certain lead sources, and we'll talk about that down the road, that will convert on your first phone call. But and from my experience, that's the exception, not the rule, right? And after you make after you generate the lead, after you've nurtured that lead, or maybe your first call, right, or after you've followed up with them so many times, what's your next goal, right? It's to go on an appointment, right? Once you've gone on an appointment, what's the next step? Is to write a contract, right? And once you've written the contract, what's the goal? To get that to closing. So regardless of where you are in this cycle, everybody is somewhere, Literally everybody is somewhere. If you're not showing houses, if you don't have listings, actively written up, then your lead generate, lead follow up, right? That's where you are. If you've got 15 buyers and you're showing, 20 houses a day, then the next thing you need to do is write and negotiate some contracts, right? You can't do these things forever, right? You need to figure out where you are in the sales cycle, and every customer might be somewhere different. You might have 10,000 leads in your lead generation, right? You might have another, 700 in the year that you're following up with. You may have, you may be working with 3 buyers, and you might have 5 listings. You might have, 2 pending contracts, right? These are all in different stages. But what's going to happen on those 2 pending contracts once they close, if you don't have people behind that coming up, behind that, moving forward in that cycle, you're going to go through that real estate roller coaster, right? Where you're rich and then you're poor, and then you're rich and then you're poor, right? This is a cycle. This is a cycle, and you always need to have somebody. You need to figure out where are the majority of customers sitting in this cycle. How do I get them moved forward, and how do I make sure that I have enough customers behind that I can have myself a steady cycle, right? And we're going to talk about that. But where does it start? Where does it start? Lead generation. If you have nothing else going on in your business, lead generation is where you start. If you don't have any leads, you do not have a business. You have nobody to follow up with. You have no appointments to go on, nobody to go on appointments with. Nobody's going to write a contract, and you're definitely not going to make it to closing. So the first thing you need to do is go out and gather some leads, right? Now, depending on your own skill level, those conversion rates are going to be different, right? But more leads obviously gives you a higher opportunity for closing, right? So what are we looking at for leads? Checkbook equity versus sweat equity. Are you out there hustling, knocking on doors, doing all these things, or are you writing a check, buying leads, right? There's pros and cons to each, right? The pro for checkbook equity is, the sky's the limit depending on how much money you want to spend to get that lead. The con to that is it's going to cost you money. The pro for sweat equity is it doesn't generally cost you much money, right? And the con is it's going to take you a lot more time, right? Now, one of these stands out to me as my favorite all-time lead generation tool: cold calling, right? Or warm calling, right? It doesn't have to be cold, and we wrote cold calling here, right? But in any number of these is going to involve making a phone call. If you get a pay-per-click, a direct mail, if you sponsor events, high-quality marketing materials that you're mailing out, right? Referrals, whatever it is, it's going to require picking up the phone. So you need to be good on the phone, right? Networking is great, right? I love networking. But if you go to a networking event and you get somebody's information and you never follow up with them again, well, what was the point, right? You have to pick up the phone. Me personally, I love cold calling to anything else. It doesn't matter what it is, right? So, what are some tips to calling, right? Action over hesitation, that's the number one, right? Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. So many people get stuck in analysis paralysis. We're going to talk later on about the clay pots, right? And that analogy or that story. But, really, it's just about doing it, right? We, for example, we do, right there, commit to calling at least 1 hour a day. Right? We do an hour of power every morning, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And we're starting to get more and more agents that are joining us. Does this mean that you can only make cold calls or you can only make phone calls from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m.? No. But at least this way, you're with other experienced callers in the office that if you have a question, we can walk you through it. If you don't know how to set something up, we'll open up a breakout room and we can walk you through it, right? And then once you're used to it, once you're sufficient at doing these things, you can call whenever. Personally, I think every person should call 2 hours a day, 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening, right? This way, the people that don't answer in the morning will probably answer in the evening, You can call different lists, right? There's different lists of different types of people that you can call. Well, what's the objective of a call, right? There's 5 objectives with the bonus. This is where people mess up. Number one, when I speak with an agent and they tell me that they're making a lot of phone calls and they're not getting any results, I'll go over the script with them. Right, and I'll say, okay, well, what are you saying? Right, number one, okay, what lead type are we talking about here? But number two, what are you saying to them? The number one problem that I hear is the agent is not closing for the appointment. Whether we think we can get that appointment or not, we should be closing for the appointment. Right, first thing, expired. Hey, are you aware your property's expired on the MLS? No, I'm not. Okay, well, I'm here to tell you that it is. Myself and my team, we specialize in selling great homes like yours that didn't sell in the first place. Can we set an appointment? I'll come by at this time, or is this time better? Right? Close. No, I'm not ready. Okay. Well, that's your opening line, right? But now you need to get conversational. You need to get conversational, right? Why? Because people want to work with somebody that they know, like, and trust. So if you're talking to somebody, you close to the appointment, and they say, no, you don't just hang up. You still have to make a connection. Right? Because they have to know you, like you, and trust you. How do you make a connection? I don't know. Figure it out. Right? Maybe they're a fan of the same sports team. Maybe they went to the same high school as you. Maybe their kid is in the same age group, right? Find some common whatever, right? Find some way to connect with this person. Right? People like them. Get a key piece of information. Why do you need a key piece of information? So that when you call them back later, it's a memory jog. Hey, John, this is Joe with MX Realty. I'm not sure if you recall, but we spoke about 3-4 months ago. I had called when your house came up expired in the MLS. You mentioned that, you were just going to hold off for a little bit because your timeline changed a little bit and you didn't need to be down in Texas until January of next year. Well, it's the end of October, and I figured it might be a good time to follow up. Are you still planning on moving down to Texas in January? Well, yes, I am. Right? Now he knows it was a valid conversation because I gave him some information that I wouldn't otherwise know unless we had that conversation. Right? And hopefully he remembers who I am. If I was effective at making a connection with him, he's going to say, oh, yeah, I remember you. Right. Thanks for following up. Because that's what people say a lot when you make a connection. Right? So once you've made that connection, get a key, right? So the first phone call, ask for the appointment, didn't get the appointment. Okay. Continue to be conversational, right? By the end of it, get permission to follow up with them. Okay, I understand, John, right? Going back to that first phone call, you're not looking to move to Texas until January. We got a little bit of time, right? Maybe I can give you a call back sometime around the end of October. Would that be okay? Yeah, that would be great. Okay, great. Right? Now he just gave me permission to follow up with them, right? The other thing, make sure you have a valid email address. Why? Because the email is just set it and forget it. It's set it and forget it. Right? Email is something that you can create an email campaign one time. If you're in MX Realty, you see it in our CRM. You see they're already there, right? Depending on what the profile is of a buyer or a seller or investor, whatever it is, it's already going to be there, right? So you create it one time. It's kind of in the beginning. That's your 80%, at least 20% of the business, right? Working in the business or working on the business. Right? But once it's already built, right, now this is something that's working for you in your sleep. Emails are going out and you're not having to send them. Right? And then finally, if the opportunity arises, and don't be pushy, the bonus is close for the appointment again. Why not close more than once? Look, I know originally, John, you said that it wasn't a good time for us to meet, but now that you're telling me that you're looking to move to Texas in January, I mean, it's almost November already. I really think we should meet now. Right? It's going to take us some time. Let me come through. Let me walk through your house. I'm going to give you some pointers on what you can do to help your house to help your house show better. Right? I've got some time this afternoon at 5 or tomorrow morning at 10. Be better. Right? Close for it again. I don't want to be pushy. I'm not trying to force myself in your door. It's okay if not. Right? But I really feel like we need to meet. Right? Right? And who are you calling? Right? We need to have an array of different profiles that we're calling, because different lead types convert differently, right? You've got fast converting leads: expired, canceled, withdrawn, for sale by owner. Expired, canceled, and withdrawn have already been on the market. For one reason or another, their house came off the market, so they already had their house for sale. For sale by owner currently has their house for sale, just not through an agent. They want to sell it themselves. So this means that their timeline is much closer than, for example, what we use our Z-Buyer leads, right? So these are instant cash offer leads. So a lot of the Z-Buyer leads that we get are people that are kind of kicking the tires right now. The thought occurred to them, well, maybe I would sell my house, but I don't know, maybe I won't, right? So, they go on and they start looking into the value of their house. They start, bringing companies in that would give them an instant cash offer, open door, and whatnot. We have an investor which did a training, was the last training, I think. She's a private money lender. And when we call these Z-Buyer leads, because they're looking for a cash offer, we do have the ability to offer them, to give them a cash offer, right? Because we can always get that property under contract with a cash offer, and we'll teach you how to do the homework on it. But if you do it right, you can now sell this contract to somebody else, right? It's not the goal, right? Are you looking for a cash offer on your house, or do you just want a quick sale? Because those aren't the same things. I can get you top dollar and I can still sell your house, as fast as humanly possible, right? Maybe we need to sit down and meet and really go over your options, really crunch some numbers. Let me see what your real needs are, because we already know that by putting the house on the market, you're exposing it to everybody out there that's looking for this type of home in this type of market, as opposed to just one person walking in and writing a cash offer. Not likely that's going to be the highest dollar that they could possibly net, right? So we want to, we're in a sense, we're protecting them from that cash offer buyer coming along, right? We've seen a lot of, I've seen wholesalers before that have offered far, far below market value to sellers, and the sellers don't know any better. They think it's a cash offer and that's their only option. But we come in and we're here to inform them, right? Make you more money in less time anyway. You don't need a cash offer, right? Now, these types of leads take longer to convert because they're tire kicking right now, but they pay off in the end, right? And then you've got ones, if you just want to make a whole lot of leads really fast, social media, website leads, Google pay-per-click leads, you get a lot of leads, but it's a very low conversion. We are not a fan of those, right? But the first two, buyer, canceled, withdrawn, and then Z-Buyer, instant cash offer, those ones, if you have a good, healthy combination of those, you should have a consistent flow of business. And what are we talking about? We're talking about sellers. I personally don't recommend marketing for buyers. Never have, never will, right? When you have the listing, you have the product, you have the inventory, you have what everybody else has. You have the listing, you get a contract, for some reason it doesn't close, that contract falls apart, you still have the product to sell, right? Get another buyer. Maybe you do an open house and you get your own buyer. Maybe you do an open house and they don't buy that house, but they buy another house. Maybe all of your other marketing that you do, right? Our goal is always, if we're going to spend our sweat, or if we're going to write a check, we're going to use any type of our equity, time or money, we're going to gear that towards sellers, right? You do not want to market for buyers or renters, for that matter, right? I mean, a renter is great, right? They'll put food on your table in the meantime, but what we want are listings. What we want are properties to sell, right? Those are the things. There's the cliche saying, and it's always a cliche for a reason, right? But you list to last, right? So what you want to do is you want to mix these up. This is going to give you a healthy flow because they're all going to convert at a different rate. But by calling different types of leads, by speaking to different types of consumers, you're building your own skills. There may be a question or an objection that comes up for an expired, that somewhere down the road, your answer to that can, by changing it around just a little bit, it might work really well for for an instant cash offer, right? You need to constantly be building your skill. You need to constantly be building your knowledge base and where you're speaking from. You should be able to answer intelligently pretty much anything, right? So we talk about the lead flow, lead generation, lead follow-up. Once they get into lead follow-up, we are going to call them. Schedule their follow-up phone call. Put them into some sort of automated calling plan. Again, we have that. If you've seen it, you can call them every week, call them every 2 weeks. We've got interval plans based on days, day 1, day 3, day 9, where the intervals spread out longer and longer, right? But you need to do it, right? But also, they should be getting those emails, right? What's the saying? What's the saying? The fortune is in the follow-up, right? You never stop following up with somebody until they convert. Now, if they didn't convert with you, you need to decide, am I going to continue to follow up with this person? Clearly, they're not loyal to me. Maybe you see an opportunity somewhere else down the road and you would keep in touch with them. Or maybe you say, well, I was not, effective in my communication with this individual. So I'm going to move on and I'm going to begin following up with more people, right? Because when you say yes to somebody, you're saying no to everybody else. So while you're following up with this person that did not convert for you and decided they were going to go convert for another real estate agent, you're not talking to all these other sellers that are waiting for you to follow up with them. Use your time wisely. Use your time very, very wisely, right? So what are we doing for listings? Right? Again, lead generation, lead follow-up, right? Going on appointments, writing contracts, closing. Well, everywhere along this process, right, you wrote the contract, right? Let's say we're talking about sellers. We can train how to talk to buyers and the flow of a buyer and all of these things, but we really want our agents pushing listings. You list to last, right? So don't complicate your listings when you get one. There's a flow and there's an order to the listing. And again, our job is not to get you from start to finish in one jump, right? It's one small step at a time, right? It's the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? So you got the listing. Well, what's in that? What do you need to do once you get the listings, right? You do all your marketing stuff. You take the photos, you write your verbiage, you run it through Chat GPT and tell them to make this sound way more beautiful, make this sound way more professional. If you're not doing that yet, you should definitely be doing that, right? Chat GPT is freaking amazing. We highly recommend it. But you have the listing. What's the next step? What's the next logical step in that flow? Well, you need to get showings, right? You're not getting showings. Well, you're stuck on listings, right? You can't negotiate a contract, right, before you have showings, unless it's sight unseen, in which case you still need to negotiate that. Okay, well, you still need to see this property within a certain amount of time, right? Okay, maybe you're out of the country, out of the state, whatever, doesn't matter. But your next logical step is a showing. So if you're stuck in listing mode and you've had that listing for 3 weeks and nobody's looked at it, then what's the problem? Are you going to address the problem? Or are you just going to act like nothing's going on and, whatever? Are you communicating with the seller on a regular basis? Should be, right? Schedule some showings. How do you get showings? Your marketing should be doing the work, right? Your photos and your remarks and the way that you have it set up should be getting people in the door. But if not, what's the problem? Maybe it's overpriced, right? There's a saying, price cures all defects. Doesn't matter what's wrong with the house. Every house will sell for a certain price, right? Everything in real estate, every home that's on the market that is not selling, if you lower the price enough, I guarantee you it'll sell, right? Because once you start having showings, now you can begin negotiating contracts, right? You can start calling, get some feedback. Did they like it? Yeah, they liked it, but what about this, right? Well, do what you need to do to get that contract to come in, right? What do we need to do? How do we need to make this happen? I don't know. Ask the buyer's agent, right? Send me an offer. I'll work on it for you, right? I don't care what offer comes in, right? I tell my sellers, don't be offended if a low offer comes in. At least they thought enough of your house to write you an offer. Be offended by the person that came in your house and didn't even think enough of your house to write an offer. Send me a stinking offer, because when I have a contract on the table in front of me, now I have the ability to negotiate that contract. Right now, I'm one step closer. I went from showing to negotiating to contract, or showing to contract to negotiations, right? So get it to that next step. You got the contract, you negotiated, it's done, right? Awesome, this is beautiful, I love it. Well, you still have to clear those contingencies. Inspection, maybe there's an appraisal, I don't know, financing, whatever contingencies are there, association approval, you have to clear those. If there's an inspection problem, how are you going to get past it, right? Because at any point, if any one of these doesn't work, you're going all the way back, right? Turn it back, right? Take those steps backwards because you're going back, right? You rolled the dice, landed in the wrong square, move back 2 spaces, right? And the final goal is the closing. Get your listing from showing to contract, clear the contingencies, and get it closed, right? It's always about moving ahead 1 space at a time. Sometimes not even the entire space, maybe it's half a space, right? A contingency you could have 4 or 5 contingencies on there. Clear 1 at a time, right? What's the next one that we need to clear? What's the next one that we need to clear? What's the next one that we need to clear, right? Clear them 1 at a time, right? What about objections, right? So you've got a few ways that we can handle some objections. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, right? One of my favorites is ask questions, because a lot of times there's a thought going on that is not, maybe, your customer doesn't fully understand what's going on. So, Mr. Seller, we discussed this. I explained it this way. What apprehensions do you have now? I'm sensing some apprehension. What is it that's causing you to be apprehensive here? Oh, well, right? Okay. And then repeat their answer. So if I'm understanding right, here's what you're saying is the problem, correct? Okay. Well, what if we handled it this way? Would that make you a little bit less apprehensive? Right? So maybe they want to relate with people, right? Understand how you feel? A lot of my clients feel the same way, right? But what they they felt the same way, and what they found is that by doing it this way, the problem goes away, right? What else can you do, right? Just reframe it, maybe, provide some data, right? So hey, here's my offer, or here's the offer you have. I think it's a good offer. Clearly, we talked in the beginning, your property was overpriced. Here's recent sales, here's active listings, right? A lot of times for our sellers, what we do, once we get the contract, we'll set them up an automated search in the MLS with their community that sends them all of the market data that falls into their, it's a 2-bathroom condo in a community. Then we'll send them all the activity automated, active, pending, closed on 2-bathroom condos in their community. That way, when the offer does come in, they've already begun doing their homework, because they're looking at what's going on in their neighborhood, and they're comparing those homes, the homes that have sold, the homes that have gone pending, the homes that are active, to their home. So they might have a little bit better idea on the price, right? That you can really never provide enough data, right? And all through the process, what are you doing? ABC. Always be closing, right? Everything that you do, every conversation that you have, from the first phone call all the way to closing, you need to be closing for that next step, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing, you need to be closing for that next step, right? What is your next step? So many people, they want to take this 30,000-foot view, right? They want to be mile high, and they want to see this whole thing all at once. But we don't need to worry about that, right? Now, when we're negotiating, we do need to think about, okay, when I do this, how's that going to affect every other aspect of this transaction, right? There needs to be some anticipation on how this is going to affect things. But really, our goal is to deal with one thing at a time, because when you deal with that one thing and you move that baby step forward, you're one step closer to the finish line. Right? If you're running a marathon, right, you're not, you just got to take that next step. Take the next step. One more step. I'm tired, but I can go one more step. I'm tired, but I can go one more step. I'm tired, but I can go one more step. Right? And then every once in a while, you know, you're going to run into somebody run into a point of the transaction, and you're going to get some energy. Right? You're going to, you know, or you're going to have a better day, and it's going to get you through to that next step. But we're always looking for that next step. And this is where I think people really miss it, especially when it's early on in the process. People get really overwhelmed with those beginning steps, lead generation to closing. Well, I don't know where to start. Well, you start with number one, right? Find your list, practice your script, start making calls. Right? That's it. That's it. You're going to do an open house. What's the first step of an open house? Right? Schedule it. Schedule it. Just schedule it. Right? Now you have a deadline. Right? And then make the rest of your list. By the way, we have an open house checklist, a mega open house checklist that you can use. Right? And it takes you through and it tells you. And actually, our open houses can start 2 to 3 weeks before the actual date of the open house. And it tells you by when you need to have each of these things done. Right? But it starts with that first step, the journey of the 1,000 miles. Right? Doesn't matter what you're trying to do, you have to take that first step. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. That drives me crazy. Right? And once you've done all of this, what do? Right? What do? You do it all over again. Right? You recycle everything that you just did, and you do it again and again and again. Except this time you have a new customer base. Right? Because you're you made it to closing. You made it to closing, right? So you have a new customer base. You might have a few new customer bases, right? Number one, you have a past client now, but your past client should never be a past client. It's all your past client is always your client, right? Why would they, if you did a good job for them, why would they not refer you more business? Hey, day of closing, right? Let them know. Glad, how was your experience? It was good. You did great. We're happy, right? Irene was amazing. We hear that a lot. Right? Okay, wow, awesome. That means a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Number one, will you write me a review? Will you write me a review on Google, please? That would mean a lot. Number two, do you know anybody else that I can maybe help? Is there anybody in your sphere, your circle of influence that might benefit from my services the same way that you did? No, none of those. Okay. Well, someday if they just bought a house, they might sell that house or they might rent it out, right? So make sure you're keeping in touch, right? But what about vendor partners, right? What about the property inspector? More importantly, what about the mortgage lender, right? So like I said, we're not marketing. We're not looking for buyers. We're not out there, we're not spending I don't personally, and I don't recommend it, right? I don't recommend spending time and money to go find a buyer. But the lender might have some extra buyers they could give you, right? Build that relationship. How can I get more of your buyer business? Do you have any lead generation techniques that you use to get buyers? And can I get on that list when you generate a buyer to start receiving those buyers, right? Build these relationships, build strong relationships. If nothing else, you're going to have a really good relationship with the lender that will answer the phone when you call. That's going to make you look good. Title attorney, even better. Imagine if you have the cell phone of an attorney and you're with the customer. I'm not sure the answer to that question, but let me call my attorney friend right now. Let me get him on the phone and see what he says. Powerful when you have an attorney on speed dial and he answers the phone, right? So all through the process. And the back of the house might be a mess. The back of the house could be a total mess, could be a total nightmare, but the front of the house is always clean and organized, right? That's how you create that consistent, memorable experience. That's how you look like the true professional, right? You guys don't know what's on my desk in front of me. It could be a hot mess. Behind me, on the desk behind me, they could be a hot mess. right? I could have papers stacked up everywhere, and there could be a small fire going on over here. Like, who knows what's going on? Nobody knows because you can't see it. And that's the way our transactions need to be, right? What you see is what I want you to see. Clean, organized, professional, right? This is what we want to do. This is how we want to create this experience, right? Could be a mess right here, right out of your view. You don't see it. But what you see, right, is well organized and well put together, right? So what's the first thing you need to do? You need to understand what your 80% that only leads to 20% of your business is, right? This is and these are things, the 80% can turn into your 20% that leads to 80% of your business. Like building email campaigns. Initially, it's time consuming and it doesn't give you any results. But once it's done and it's built, maybe it will get you results. Right? So don't get confused and think that, some of these things are the only things that you should do. You need to think outside the box here. But you need to think about, okay, what can I do today that's going to lead to me getting a deal as fast as possible, right? Because we need to eat dinner. We need to eat dinner every single day. So we need to be thinking about, what is this thing that I should do today, right? You get plenty of leads. You're following up with plenty of people. You got a lot of people in your pipeline, right? Great. Don't stop doing what you were doing, but now maybe you can take care of a few extra little things that you can do, right? Do not become a professional student. This is, in my opinion, one of the biggest things that's going to cause failure for new agents. This is the reason why we do record our trainings, but it's also why we don't have a ridiculous amount of training in this office. Trainings can only get you so far. From my experience, there's very little money to be made in a training room. Maybe you meet an agent that at some point you pass a referral to or from or with or whatever, but for the most part, if you're in a training, you're sitting in a room full of your competitors, right? So if you take a training, then take some time after the training to implement what you've learned, right? Don't do training, 3 trainings in a day, 3 trainings tomorrow, two trainings a day after that, right? But become that person that never implements any of the things that they're learning. You have to implement, right? And it's super simple, right? Figure out lead generation. Get very good at your first lead generation technique before moving on to the next. If social media is going to be your thing, then social media should be your thing, right? Okay, where am I going to start? Well, you want to get good at maybe one platform at a time. Let me become, proficient in Instagram before I go to LinkedIn, or vice versa. I don't know, right? How do you see your business? We're going to be doing some business planning next month. We do business planning in November, and we can talk more about that, right? Prioritizing. But until one lead source begins producing some type of result, don't go on to another lead source, right? And you certainly don't want 5, 6, 7, 8 lead sources with none of them producing results, because none of them are getting adequate attention, and you're a jack of all trades but a specialist in none, right? Wouldn't it be better to master one lead source and just become the total master of that one lead source, and have that lead source give you consistent business day in and day out, week in, month in, year out? You're getting consistent business. It's when people jump all over the place, they don't get results. They do something for 3 months and they say it doesn't work. They give up. They didn't give enough effort to that thing because they thought it was a genie in a bottle, right? Give it time to work, right? The parable of the clay pots, right? I don't know if this is a real story or not. Again, you hear a lot of things that I say a lot of the same things. I truly believe these things, right? But this is the perfect story of a professional student, right? So, there was an art teacher, and, they were doing a lesson on making clay pots. So what he did for the day is he broke his class up into two groups. He told the group, he said, the group, this side and this side over here. So this side over here, your job is to make one perfect clay pot. That's it. I only want one perfect clay pot. This side over here, make as many clay pots as possible, right? As many as possible. Just crank them out. I don't care what they look like. I don't care anything. Just crank them out, right? So they all went off. They went to go do their assignments. By the end of the day, right, the side that was tasked with making one perfect clay pot didn't make a perfect clay pot because they spent their entire time studying how to make a clay pot, right? Trying to take that one pot and make it absolutely perfect, right? Just one pot. How do you make this one pot perfect? They couldn't figure it out, right? The other side that was tasked with just making as many clay pots as possible, by the end of the day, they knew how to make a perfect clay pot. Not because they studied it, not because they took the time, nor were they really even trying, but it was through trial and error, figuring out a technique that works better, right? Figuring out maybe I don't know how to make clay pots in the first place, but maybe there's like some water to clay ratio. I don't know, right? But that's how we encourage our agents to do things, right? Just go, don't sit and worry and don't think about how to make something absolutely perfect, right? Just get out there and start doing it. When you're going to make a cold call and you're going to call a lead source, all you need to know is that opening line, right? There's objection handlers, and a lot of those lead sources use the same objections, right? You can have an idea on what those objections are going to be, right? But if you wait until you deliver that opening line perfect, or you wait until you know the objections perfectly, you may never pick up the phone. But by picking up the phone and fumbling through your script, fumbling through the objections, saying stupid things, right? Doing stupid things, maybe even saying the wrong thing, right? We're going to figure it out. And over time, you're going to make enough bad clay pots. You're going to have enough bad phone calls that sooner or later, you're going to figure out how to make a good phone call. Because what does your mind do when you sleep? One of the things that your mind does is it works out problems in your sleep. If there was a maze or a puzzle or something that you're stuck on before you go to bed, in your sleep, your mind will be working on how to solve that, right? So if somebody stumps you, number one, you shouldn't get stumped on a call, because if you do, if you're in the power hour room with us, right, you raise your hand, your digital hand, and you say, hey guys, somebody just said this, what should I say? And what you're probably going to get is going to be, a different answer, maybe from every person, right? Well, I would say this, I would say this, I would say this. Oh, that's happened to me, and I've said this, right? But now you're going to have all these different ways to go about it, and you're going to find the one that works best for you, right? The one that fits your personality the most. You don't need to say it exactly how it's written or how somebody else says it. Make it your own. Or if you want to write it down so you don't mess it up, you should. Right? But then after time, you should at some point make this script, make these objection handlers your own. But all of these things just require going out and making a bunch of really ugly clay pots. Social media is going to be your jam. You're gonna go out and make one social media video a day. I guarantee you, in the beginning, those social media videos are going to be a little awkward, and they're going to feel weird. They're going to sound weird. You're going to look stiff. You're going to look all kinds of ways. But after doing enough, I don't know what the magic number is. Let's say you do 100. I guarantee you that 100th video that you make is going to be far superior to that very first one that you did, right? But it's just a matter of going out and doing it, right? And you'll feel the progression. You'll feel the progression, and it's about just really never giving up. Because that's the other thing people do, is they give up when they're so close to striking it, they give up, right? That's why, you try one lead source at a time. Give it a year. Give it a year. If it doesn't work out in a year, then yeah, you know what? Maybe it's not going to work. But even if one lead source in your first year, if you get one closing from one lead source in 1 year, right, you should have follow-ups coming up behind that, and then you start your second lead source, right? These are, these are the things. If I was moving into a new market center, a new area outside of my area, this is what I would do, right? This is how I would handle it. One lead source at a time. Just jump in, start doing it. Don't wait for it to be perfected, right? And then figure out the problems as I'm going, right? Let's build the plane while we're flying it, right? That's real estate. That's sales, not analysis paralysis. There's no, there's nothing new in real estate. There's no new silver bullet. It all boils down to the 20%. If your number one thing is lead generation, if you don't have enough leads in your pipeline, then that's what you should be focusing on. And if you're calling too many leads and you're not getting any results, maybe it's your objectives. Right? If you're doing a bunch of follow-up, you're not getting any results, maybe you're not closing for the appointment. Maybe you're using the wrong close, right? But figure out where you are in your sales cycle and figure out what you need to do to get to that next step. If you're in lead generation, your next step is either go on an appointment or lead follow-up. Right? How can you do that better? If you got a bunch of leads you're following up with, then you better start closing them for appointments. If you're going on so many appointments that you come home and you feel like your brain is about to melt, you better figure out how to turn those appointments into contracts. Right? What's that sticking point that I'm with all of these customers showing houses all day, every day, but none of them are turning into contracts? Right? Well, you're also negotiating with your customers. So you better figure out how to negotiate with them better. Maybe you're not a good listener. Right? Maybe they're telling you things, nonverbal things that you're just not picking up. Right? Pay attention. Figure out, how do I get myself to the next step? That's the key to your success. Key to everybody's success. From the start line to the finish line is one step at a time. There's no other way. There's no other way. Right? You're not going to be able to just jump from start to finish. You have to take the steps. It's the only way. So appreciate everybody coming out. Thank you for those who attended. Means a lot. I hope that this time was educational for you. Because we are shameless, we're going to take a moment to do one more shameless plug for any non-MX agents that are watching this training. Please scan the QR code. This will be recorded, so you can come back and watch it later. If you lose the QR code, you can always come back and find it if you want to learn more about Miranda Executive Realty. Join us again in 2 weeks for our next Ask the Broker training session. Really excited to have you guys come through.